really help the poverty elevation. And also, I think Mr. Kiriwandanya very clearly said that banks don't lend to low-income sector because they always go by with the big sharks. But yes, it's very true that these two sectors don't talk to each other sometimes, but it's very important we create financial tools. One of the things that the organization that I represent, we have done is that we've created a guarantee mechanism. Because of the guarantee, the banks are able to lend to the microfinance sector. And with some of the research done, I think Mr. Fernando many times said of the weak practices among the MFIs. But actually, in my personal opinion, most MFIs have very good sophisticated systems, but it's just that it's not streamlined properly how a bank would want to see. So they have very, very good systems. They have insurance systems and very good systems. So if there are tools that can help that system to speak the financial language that a bank would want to see, and for banks to just a little bit to move their stiff necks from the usual market and to give them another good market opportunity, if financial tools can be created, I think we can streamline most of the things.
Thank you. That's great.
Craig Wilson, FTC. A question for the panel. I wonder if the panel collectively or individually has a vision for completing financial inclusion in Sri Lanka, depending on the definition that you might want to accept. But for sake of argument, we can say that financial inclusion is at 59% in Sri Lanka. For example, collectively, the government, the central bank, the Bankers Association, the Microfinance Association, is there the possibility that they could develop a shared vision such that, say, 10 years from today, Sri Lanka is at 97% financial inclusion and leading the world?
Thank you, Craig. Excellent question.
I think this related to policies and the constraints of the microfinance sector. I would say, as a little while ago, a gentleman raised question: what is the first number one constraint? And Dr. Koshimata, he is not here now, and he also raised the same issue. And Mr. Wijewardena expressed that, and also I am also agree with, if the commercial banks or the banking sector institution can provide or allocate some percentage of their profit, it is not for the subsidized credit, but for example, creating their own subsidiary or some department or some unit. And Mr. Chandula Abhikrama correctly said, then they can link with the microfinance institution. Then the fund problem will be not arise. And I would say, I like to say, because all the banking institutions in this country today, not all, the majority, have understood the value. And they have understood the value of to penetrate the rural market, because they have understood that their future customer base is in the villages. And therefore, they will plan, and they have I think all of these banks, the board of directors, have recently, during last 2-3 years, they discuss, even in major commercial banks, they have discussed to set up their own units and or some subsidiary or some sort of arm to deliver finance through existing financial institution, microfinance institution, or some other system, innovative system. Therefore, the future is better when in respect of policy. Actually, they see the Cambodian experience. As Cambodian friends are here, I think they will say they have taken initiative from the industry, not from the government or the central bank or the others. The initiative should come from the industry, microfinance industry. They have not given initially. They have not given an appointment to discuss with them. That was the very, the serious problem at that time, initially. But little by little, they were able to convince and they were able to, prove that they are in a capacity to deliver services in a good manner, on the sustainable manner for the development of the rural sector. Then policy dialogue should be started from the industry. And always the policy authorities for the policy, the government maybe, or the central bank, it's always responsive in our country. If the industry will organize and decide what would be the policy, what would be the requirement, then the authority is always ready to listen and discuss, even though it is not mentioned in the government policy agenda as you mentioned, but it is not I don't think it is lacking. The government is also concerned about microfinance. Government has a plan. That's why the government want to implement some sort of program. We should not criticize those things, but that is the government thinking. If we can explain the danger or the disadvantages of the approach of the government, that should be initiated by the industry. Then the government will listen. Accordingly, the policy can be designed and formulated and established.
Thank you, Mr. Karunandan. It's not just criticism, it's public discourse, and that is how we move forward in terms of ideas, insights, and building using wisdom to move forward an industry. Thank you very much. Anyway, Dr. Kirivandania?
Yes, I am say about individually representing my organization. We realized this issue about 3 years ago. We met more than 6,000 community leaders together, and we developed concept paper for 10 years. 10 years means dasaka. Dasaka means decade. So we projected that dasaka for 3 years like that. We complete 3 years. In this 3 years, we targeted 5,000 villages. We have 8,000 primary society, covered each and every villages. Out of that, we already identified 5,000 villages. To lead this program, we identified 1,000 primary society. These 1,000 primary society, we have a plan, training program for them, and professional development for rural planning and microfinance sector. That program is going on. Last year, Dr. Vijayawardena mentioned about the contribution for financial microfinance. We already released more than 1 billion rupees, particularly for this target group. That our target group already has a society, and in addition, some societies defund. This is a voluntary organization. But we put that vacuum and we organize SSG. We call Sanasa Group SG. Now we have 1,100 groups representing 35,000 families also. These figures are in my memory because I am weekly monitoring this program. So our target for coming 3 years, 100,000 groups where is no good primary Sanasa society. So that group, we are totally change our credit policy. We are not going beyond 1 million loan. We are strict to up to 1 million. Earlier we deal with the clients about 60 million, 50 million, near to 100 million. But we want to focus these poor groups. We reduce our loan limit up to 1 million. Within 3 years, we expand our credit program for particularly both small as medium-sized industry and others. That's our 3-year program, including our total 10-year program.
Thank you, Dr. Kirivandania. Mr. Vijaytilaka, would you like to share some views on what was discussed?
Yeah, general observation, as commercial bankers, having a commercial bank also, a commercial bank, if is given a target of 100 million to be lent, average commercial banker would like to lend that at 25 million each to 4 customers. But the real need is to identify at least 100 customers and give 1 million each, but it simply doesn't happen. So a certain amount of change of approach is necessary among the commercial bank, realizing the value of the social value of of what we were talking about. And more than that, I can tell you, Chandul will support me. We have had enormous benefit due through our microfinancing system and our gambling system of the deposit mobilization, and also the building of relationships through people. As I mentioned, the small man becomes a medium-sized man, the medium-sized become a large-sized man, large-sized man become a big man. That is the time the relationship value will be there. He will be so loyal to that organ. That is what the bankers do not realize today. So I think that has to be done. Also, I think certain amount of compulsion may be necessary. We have all of us have a deposit base, the commercial banks. I don't know whether Mr. Karunaratne would like to consider this with the authorities. We can have a system where the banks can be compelled to allocate a part of the deposit base, a small percentage of the deposit base, towards microfinancing. And maybe give them some sort of leeway, not applying the NPA ratios and maybe those things, some leeway, so that there will be at the end of the day some compulsion to the commercial banks to allocate a part of the deposit base towards microfinancing. And also maybe, as I mentioned, I repeat, there are 93,000 village units. It's not possible for one bank to do this. A bank can be given a province and say, please look after the villagers in this province. Some sort of regulatory requirements may be necessary for people to have commercial banks to have a changed approach if we want to have results in the coming years on this exercise.
Thank you. Reserve Bank of India recently announced that each commercial bank has to have a financial inclusion plan prepared and approved by the board and submitted to the RBI for review and implementation. We don't have anything like that. In Philippines, central bank is playing a very active role in promoting financial inclusion. They have outreach programs, they have dedicated units and staffs. And Mr. Karunaratne, I think you have to bring across this message to your superiors. And we are very, very far behind in these efforts when compared with the rest of the world. And our central bank I think, has to be more active if we need to realize 100% financial inclusion within a foreseeable future. Mr. Vijayawardena, we would like to hear some.
In fact, I also agree that there must be a policy that Sri Lanka should go for within the next 5 years or within the next 10-year period to complete the financial inclusion in Sri Lanka, and it must be the duty of Mr. Karunaratne, who will take this message back to his superiors and initiate action on that. The most important factor is that when I said that commercial banks should allocate at least 5% of their profits for microfinance, I didn't mean the Het National Bank, because Het National Bank had already been involved in microfinance work, but there are some commercial banks which have not even allocated a single cent for microfinance. Because what we mean by microfinance is not the SME sector. Most of the commercial banks in Sri Lanka, they are involved in the SME sector, but microfinance is a different art, a different science, and a different technology. And that technology, the bank will have to train its staff to go forward, and there has not been any attempt by this bank. But thanks to Mr. Karunaratne's latest JICA project, most of the domestic commercial banks are now involved in extending microfinance credit in the northern and eastern provinces. So they might learn it, and in the future we can expect that these people will realize the true value of microfinance to build up the small micro entrepreneur to a big entrepreneur, as Mr. Vijay